Have you ever noticed you're always the one reaching out first, always the one texting, calling, checking in, and when you stop, even for a moment, the silence is deafening. No response, no effort, just nothing? It leaves you questioning, do they even care? Or have I just been carrying this connection alone the whole time? If they never call or text you first, don't panic and don't chase, because what you do next will show you everything you need to know about their intentions, your self-worth, and the future of this relationship. What if the key wasn't in doing more, but doing less? What if the silence wasn't a game, but a truth waiting to be revealed? In this video, we're going to walk through 6 powerful shifts, why pulling back isn't punishment, why filling your life with those who reciprocate changes everything, and how to stop mistaking crumbs for care. You'll learn how to step out of the cycle of overgiving. And finally, feel the power of being pursued, not just tolerated. This isn't about being cold, it's about being clear. Because once you raise your standard, you stop begging for the bare minimum and start attracting so much more. If you're always the one reaching out first, the one texting, calling, checking in, then at some point you have to ask yourself a very honest question. Am I in a relationship or am I in pursuit? There's a massive difference between someone being busy and someone being disinterested. And we get that confused all the time because we want to believe the best in people. We say, oh, maybe they're just not good at texting, or maybe they've had a stressful week. And sure, life gets busy, people have off days. But when the pattern is consistent, when you're always the one initiating, you're not just dealing with a busy schedule anymore. You're dealing with someone who isn't prioritizing you. We chase people sometimes, not because they're giving us a lot, but because they're giving us just enough to keep us hanging on. That little spark, that occasional reply, that half-hearted compliment, we cling to that like it's proof that something meaningful is happening here. But is it really? Or are we just desperate for connection where connection isn't being offered? There's something powerful about recognizing the difference between effort and availability. Someone can be physically available. They might be single. They might answer your texts eventually. They might even hang out with you from time to time, but are they emotionally available? Are they genuinely interested in knowing you, investing in you, building with you? You see, when someone's truly interested, you won't be stuck in guessing games. You won't wonder if today's the day they'll finally text first. People who value you show it. It's not about grand gestures, it's the little things, the check-ins, the random thinking of you messages, the consistent interest. You won't need to be Sherlock Holmes trying to decode silence. Their actions will speak loudly and clearly. The danger is, when we constantly reach out first, we start to shrink our own value. We tell ourselves that maybe this is just how love works. Maybe the more I give, the more I'll get. But relationships don't thrive on imbalance. You cannot manufacture connection. You cannot force someone to care. And you definitely can't build a healthy relationship if you're the only one building. The hardest part is the fear. The fear that if we stop texting first, the communication will die. And maybe it will. That's what terrifies people. That if they stop showing up, the other person won't step forward. And that confirms our worst fear. They never cared that much to begin with. But here's the truth. It's not your job to maintain someone else's interest. You don't have to be performing for love. You're not auditioning. You're not sending the first text to keep the connection alive, because it's your responsibility. If it dies when you stop trying, it was never mutual in the first place. It was a one-person show. When you stop chasing, you create space, and in that space, the truth comes out. They either notice the silence and step forward, or they disappear into it. Either way, you win. Because now, you're not caught in the illusion, you're dealing with reality. You're seeing things as they are, not as you hope they'll be. We waste so much energy trying to change the nature of the connection instead of just accepting it. We hope that maybe one more message will shift things, one more chance, one more reminder, that we're here. But that's not how connection works. You can't teach someone to care. You can only give them the opportunity to show up and then pay attention to whether or not they do. And listen, I know it's hard to let go of the idea you've built around this person who you think they could be, what the relationship could look like if only they tried harder. But don't fall in love with potential. Fall in love with effort. Fall in love with consistency. Fall in love with someone who shows up, not someone who only responds when you prompt them to. We all deserve to feel chosen, not just tolerated. If you constantly feel like you're chasing someone down just to have a conversation, it's not love. It's emotional labor. And love, real love, doesn't feel like labor. It feels like home. So if they never call or text you first, just stop. Not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, but because your energy is precious, your time is valuable, and the right person, they won't need reminders to value it. Just stop. Stop texting first. Let the silence speak. Most of yous are afraid of that silence. Terrified, really. We think if we don't keep the conversation going, if we don't reach out, if we don't make that effort, we'll lose them. We imagine them drifting further away, forgetting about us, finding someone else. So we panic. We reach out again. We send that message. We check in. We initiate again and again. But here's the truth. If someone never reaches out first, and the relationship is entirely propped up by your effort, then you haven't really lost something valuable when you stop. You've just stopped investing in a dynamic that was never balanced to begin with. Letting silence do its work isn't a punishment. It's not about being cold or manipulative. It's about creating a pause, a space to see what the other person chooses to do when you're not filling the gaps for them. Because people reveal their priorities not just in what they say, but in what they do when they're not prompted. Think about it. If you're always the one saying hi, always the one checking in, always the one suggesting plans, and they're happy to respond but never reciprocate without your lead, that tells you everything you need to know. That's not partnership. That's you managing both ends of the rope. Now, when you pull back, here's what usually happens. If they value you, really value you, they'll notice. The silence will feel strange to them too. They'll feel the absence of your presence and think, wait, I haven't heard from them. I miss that. They'll reach out, maybe even more thoughtfully than before, because suddenly they realize they can't take your effort for granted. But if they don't reach out, if they don't notice, then that's a powerful sign. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's also a gift. Because what you've done is eliminate the illusion. You've taken off the mask of potential and replaced it with reality. You've stopped giving them all the benefits of closeness without any of the effort on their part. Now I get it. You'll have this urge to explain, to justify, to think, maybe they're just busy, or maybe they're not good at texting, or maybe they're waiting for me. But deep down, we know the difference between someone who's just quiet and someone who's indifferent, someone who's unsure and someone who's unavailable. And here's something else you need to remember. Love isn't proven by how fast someone replies to a message, but effort, that's visible. Interest, that's felt. And consistency, that's earned. If someone wants to speak to you, they will. Maybe not instantly, maybe not in a flood of texts, but they'll reach out. They'll make time. They'll show that you matter to them. When you always make the first move, you don't give them a chance to do any of that. You don't get to see what they'd actually do without your constant presence. And that's important because the person who's meant for you won't be indifferent to your distance. They'll close it. There's this voice that comes up when we stop reaching out. It says, what if they never talk to me again? And here's the harsh but liberating answer. If they don't, that tells you everything. If the silence is permanent, then the connection was conditional. We spend too much time trying to keep low-effort people in our lives because of the way they could be, instead of accepting them as they are. We fantasize about potential, about how they were that one time they seemed interested, about the chemistry, but we forget that any real connection is built on mutual effort, not memory. So, stop texting first, not to play games, not to make them chase you, but to restore balance, to give yourself space to see clearly, to give them the opportunity to step up and to see whether they even want to. And most of all, to remind yourself that your energy is valuable. Your effort is meaningful, and you shouldn't have to beg someone to notice either. If someone doesn't call, doesn't text, doesn't try, it's not your job to convince them to care. Your job is to protect your peace and align yourself with people who don't need reminders to value you. Let the silence speak. It always tells you the truth. You're not needy for wanting attention. You're human. We all want to feel like someone is thinking about us, missing us, reaching out because they want to, not because they have to. And that need for connection, that little spark of wanting to feel seen, it's completely natural. But what isn't natural, what becomes toxic, is when we start believing that we have to earn someone's attention just to feel worthy of it. When we tie our value to whether or not someone sends a text back, or initiates a call, or shows up consistently, we start shrinking ourselves to fit into someone else's level of effort. And that's where we lose ourselves. There's a very real difference between wanting connection and needing someone in particular to give it to you. When you want to hear from someone and they don't reach out, it can feel like rejection. But when you need them to reach out in order to feel okay, that's where the danger lies. Because now you're outsourcing your sense of self-worth to someone who might not even be thinking about you. You're handing over the keys to your confidence and saying, here, you get to decide how good I feel about myself today. And that's a position of weakness, not love. What you have to remember is your worth doesn't increase because someone finally texts you back. It doesn't decrease because it's not a sign to work harder. It's a sign to look deeper. Ask yourself, why am I settling for this dynamic? Why does it feel normal to give more than I receive? Sometimes it's not even about that person anymore. It's about an old pattern. Maybe even something you learned in childhood where you had to earn love or prove your worth. So now you're unconsciously drawn to people who give you just enough to keep you hoping, but never enough to feel secure. And you think that if you can just win their attention, it'll heal something inside you. But it won't. It'll just keep the cycle going. Here's the truth. Someone who's truly interested doesn't need reminders. They don't forget to text you back. They don't ignore you for days and then expect everything to be normal when they reappear. They don't keep you guessing about where you stand. That's not how people behave when they value someone. You've probably had friends or family members who do show up consistently. You've seen what effort looks like. You know the difference. So stop pretending you don't. Stop lowering your standard just because your heart is invested. You can care about someone deeply and still decide that you won't tolerate breadcrumbs. It's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to wish they'd step up, but don't confuse that wish with reality. Don't keep waiting for a version of them that only exists in your imagination. You deserve someone who doesn't just respond when it's convenient, but reaches out because they're thinking of you. Someone who wants to be part of your life without being nudged, chased, or guilt-tripped. And if that's not the energy you're getting, then the question becomes, why am I still pouring into this? Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is nothing. You stop initiating, you stop over-explaining, you stop making excuses for someone else's lack of effort, and instead you sit with the discomfort because yes, it's uncomfortable at first. The silence can feel loud, but over time that silence becomes clarity, and clarity becomes peace. When you're not constantly waiting for a message that may never come, You start focusing on things and people who actually make you feel wanted. And the moment you stop chasing the person who never calls or texts first, you make room for the one who always will. You ever notice how we tell ourselves stories to avoid uncomfortable truths? Like when someone never reaches out first, we convince ourselves they're just busy or shy or bad at texting. We spin all these tales to avoid the reality that maybe, just maybe, they're not putting in the same effort. And yet we keep initiating every time. Now, here's the thing. It's okay to care. It's okay to miss someone and want to talk to them. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But when it's always you reaching out, always you checking in, always you carrying the weight of the connection, at some point you have to stop and ask, am I the only one driving this? That's why sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just pause. Let the silence settle. And instead of filling that space with anxious texts or assumptions, observe what they do. If they notice the gap and come towards you, great. But if they don't, that silence tells you everything their words won't. Now, here's where people get stuck. They either suffer in silence, resenting that they always have to initiate, or they explode with frustration when it's gone on too long. But what most people don't do is just ask. Ask calmly, honestly, directly. One time, that's it. Something like, hey, I noticed I tend to start most of our conversations. I really like talking to you and I'd love to feel like it's a two-way thing. Is everything okay? You're not accusing, you're not demanding, you're simply expressing how you feel. And you're giving them an opportunity to meet you halfway. Now here's the catch. You only need to ask once. That's it. Because after that, their actions will tell you what you need to know. If they acknowledge it, take it seriously, and show up differently, then amazing, that's growth. That's someone who wants to make the relationship better. But if they brush it off, say you're overthinking, or act like it's no big deal, pay close attention. If nothing changes, you don't need to keep asking. You need to start adjusting, because constantly having to ask someone to value you is not a conversation. It's a negotiation you should never have to make. And when you keep initiating with someone who doesn't match your energy, you're not just giving them your time, you're borrowing it from someone else who would actually appreciate it. It's not about making ultimatums. It's not about playing games. It's about alignment. If someone truly values you, they won't need to be convinced to show up. They just will. And if they don't, that's not your failure. It's just information. People get scared when they hear this. They think, but if I stop reaching out, maybe we'll just stop talking entirely. And you know what? That might happen, but that's not a tragedy. That's clarity. Because if the only thing keeping a relationship alive is you, then it was never really alive in the first place. This isn't about ego. It's not about pride. It's about peace. When you know you've been open, honest, and clear, and someone still doesn't step up, you can walk away with your head high, not wondering what you could have done differently. You already did what most people avoid. You faced the truth head on. So instead of endlessly trying to decode silence, speak once with courage, and then let their response speak louder than any excuses ever could. That's all you need to do. Ask once, then move accordingly. You know, one of the biggest shifts you can make, not just in dating, but in life, is choosing to fill your world with people who actually reciprocate. And I'm not just talking about romantic relationships. I mean friends, colleagues, even family. Anyone who is part of your emotional ecosystem, because here's the truth. When you surround yourself with people who meet you halfway, the ones who don't even try, start to feel very, very out of place. It's easy to get caught up in the emotional investment we make in someone. Maybe you've shared beautiful moments. Maybe the chemistry is insane. Maybe there's potential and you're holding on because you can see what it could be if only they stepped up. But potential doesn't mean a thing if it never becomes reality. You can't build a relationship on what you wish someone would do. You have to respond to what they're actually doing right now. If you're the one constantly sending the first text, always initiating plans, always putting yourself out there and getting breadcrumbs in return, ask yourself this: what are you teaching your brain to normalize? What are you telling yourself is acceptable? Because the people you spend time with don't just fill your calendar, they shape your emotional standards. And the longer you tolerate inconsistency, the more it becomes your new normal. The game changes when you stop chasing after people who are lukewarm about you and start noticing the ones who are actually consistent. It's about recalibrating your radar. Instead of interpreting someone's silence as a mystery you need to solve, you see it for what it is: lack of effort. And instead of feeling rejected, you recognize your worth and let that silence echo behind you as you walk away. Now, this doesn't mean cutting people off at the first sign of imperfection. Everyone has off days. Life gets busy, but there's a difference between someone who occasionally doesn't text back right away and someone who never takes initiative. If someone values you, you won't always have to wonder how they feel. They'll make it known, not with grand gestures, but with small, consistent actions. That's what real effort looks like. And here's the part no one talks about. When you start giving more energy to people who show up for you, something incredible happens. Your nervous system begins to relax. You're not constantly questioning if someone likes you. You're not anxiously checking your phone waiting for a reply. You feel safe, seen, secure. And that's when you realize that love, real love, doesn't feel like a roller coaster. It feels like a soft place to land. But to get there, you have to make room. And that means letting go of the people who don't make room for you. It means not filling the silence with more texts, not making excuses for their lack of effort, not convincing yourself that your standards are too high just because they're unwilling to meet them. You're not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong person. The hard part is when your heart is still in it. When you care about someone, pulling back can feel like punishment. Not for them, but for you. But it's not about punishing. It's about protecting. You protect your peace by not giving your best to someone who only gives you the bare minimum. You protect your energy by redirecting it to people who see your worth without needing constant reminders. You know who those people are? The ones who remember your little details, who check in on you just because, who don't wait for you to always be the one reaching out. It may not be fireworks every day, but it's real, it's consistent, and it's freeing. Because now you're not waiting to be chosen. You're noticing who already has. The moment you stop chasing effort and start investing in mutual connection, your standards rise, not because you're trying to be difficult, but because you've tasted what it's like to feel emotionally safe. And once you've felt that, anything less feels hollow. So if someone never calls or texts first, if you're always the one carrying the weight of the connection, pause, pull back. Not to create drama, not to test them, but to see what's real. Because if someone wants you in their life, they'll show up. If they don't, their silence is an answer too. You just have to be willing to listen. You see, a lot of people confuse pulling back with playing games. They think if you stop texting first or stop showing the same effort, it's some kind of manipulative move, like you're trying to trigger a reaction or punish someone for not doing what you want. But here's the truth. Pulling back isn't a game. It's a standard. And until you understand that, you'll keep giving energy to people who treat it like an option instead of a privilege. When someone isn't calling or texting you first, the easiest thing to do is make excuses for them. They're busy. They're not good at texting. Maybe they don't realize I want them to reach out. But over time, if the pattern continues, it starts to erode your self-esteem because deep down, you know it shouldn't feel like you're constantly having to chase someone just to feel noticed. You know that feeling when you're staring at your phone, wondering if they even think about you when you're not reaching out. That question alone is a signal. Now, pulling back doesn't mean slamming the door or cutting them off with some dramatic exit. It doesn't mean ghosting or trying to win by making them chase you. No, it simply means aligning your actions with your value. It means choosing not to invest more than you're receiving. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows that their time, attention, and energy are precious, and they should never have to convince someone to want it. So instead of continuing the cycle of always initiating, you just pause. You stop forcing the flow. You let the dynamic reveal itself. And this is important because when you remove your effort from the equation, what's left is their real level of interest. And sometimes the truth hurts, but that truth also sets you free. And here's the shift I want you to make. Don't see your silence as a strategy. See it as a reflection of your boundaries. This isn't about waiting to see if they come running back. It's about creating space for someone who already would. If they notice the gap and step into it, great. If they don't, that tells you everything. Because the kind of connection you deserve doesn't need pressure or persuasion. It doesn't come from constantly explaining how you want to be treated. Real connection shows up for you because it wants to, not because you had to orchestrate it. And you don't need to prove you're worth someone's time. You just need to stop spending it in the wrong place. This isn't bitterness. It's boundaries. It's choosing not to be in relationships where your presence is only felt when it's convenient for the other person. It's choosing not to be in situations where you're always wondering what you mean to someone. That wondering steals your peace. And